Rabbi makes the most complicated too.
I want to make it complicated. It might be complex.
No, I was just saying, the rabbis, all of them.
They don't mean to make it complicated. They, there's a lot going on.
Echo?
Yeah, our conversation is on.
That's it.
Everything you say is recorded.
Careful.
We ready to start, Roy?
Ready to roll.
Starting now.
It's good to hear.
Okay. We are on. See what we were talking about yesterday. Yeah. Yes. Okay. We're on Lamed Testament base 39b. Let's get from the paper. When he comes in, he can be ready to roll. And we're talking about rolls over here. Okay. By the way, remember, I just want to share, Morris, remember, on every Yom Tov, we said there's a mitzvah of Simchat HaRegel. It's a mitzvah that you should be happy.
I know, my wife told me was, I want you to buy me a gift. I'll hold it looks like I leave.
Right? She knows right? Right?
She wants very gifts like that.
Because there's a special, why is she saying that? Because there's a mitzvah. She heard it from our class. We said there's a special halacha, Simcha on the Yom Tov. You have to remember this Akiva too. Mitzvah of rejoicing on the Yom Tov. And rejoicing on the Yom Tov means that you have to do things that will help your Simcha. Men should get nice wine in honor of Yom Tov. Women and as Hashem, when people have children, they buy them candies for the children. And for the wife, they buy something that the wife enjoys too. That doesn't mean that you have to spend. Again, Morris, you hear what I'm saying? I don't believe it means that you have to spend, break the bank, as they say.
No.
You see what I'm saying? You could buy something that's not so expensive. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. There's something called custom jewelry, right? I don't know if you get away with such a thing or not. I don't know. I can't tell you. Or you tell her to buy. Morning, I've run much. You tell her to buy something new. Let her buy. Let her buy something, a new dress, and do something in honor of the Yom Tov. You know. Okay, so that's funny. But we're talking about the Simchat HaRegel. Funny, Mr. Haber. We're talking about the mitzvah of Simcha on Yom Tov. That you have a mitzvah to person who's married to get something for their wife in honor, right, Mr. Haber, of honor of Yom Tov. This mitzvah of Simchat HaRegel. The wife, a person's wife, should get something new in honor of Yom Tov. Doesn't mean that you have to buy it. If she goes to the store and you're paying for it, you're also fulfilling the mitzvah as well. She buys herself a new pair of dress, anything, jewelry, anything like that. But there's also part of the mitzvah of Simchat HaRegel, the Torah says also to make sure that the poor people are happy for Yom Tov. Therefore, everybody need, and I think Shavuot is the Yom Tov that people might forget about that aspect. But I think on Pesach, everybody's very careful on Pesach to make sure that the poor people have a Pesach. Good morning, Mike. We're just saying, Mike, about today is Thursday and Yom Tov is Sunday night. And we're talking about the mitzvah of Simchat HaRegel for a moment, that everyone has to make sure they have Simcha on the Regel. And we spoke about the idea that, for the men, everybody according to what makes them, men enjoy some good wine, women to get something new for the women in honor of Yom Tov, whether it's clothing or jewelry or something. And for the poor people, that I think the poor people might need to also have for Yom Tov. So people have to be thinking about who is poor, identify who's poor, and make sure that between now and Sunday night, you give something to a poor person that he and family should be able to have for Yom Tov. So that's what I want to share with everybody, that mitzvah. People, make sure everyone takes care of that mitzvah in honor of the Yom Tov. Okay, back in the Gemara, on Lamed Testament base, 39b. We had yesterday, we spoke about there was a Yireh Shemayim. We spoke about Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said that a Yireh Shemayim, a God-fearing person, will fulfill both opinions. You know, if we'll go ahead and we'll explain according to Rashi, how Rashi explains, as Morris earlier was talking about the large piece, the whole roll. So we had Rashi that says that according to Rabbi Yochanan, you say the bracha on the whole roll, even if it's smaller than the large piece. And we had the other opinion of the Gemara that says, no, the large piece is will be preference over the whole roll. And we said the halacha follows the whole roll. Tosfot says that's the preference. You go after the whole roll. And we also said that a Yireh Shemayim, good morning, Aaron, that a Yireh Shemayim, a God-fearing person, tries to fulfill both opinions. So what does he do? He holds both in his hands. He holds the whole roll and that large piece. If it's a large piece, is larger than the whole roll. So he's giving honor both to the roll and when he's saying the bracha, he's saying the bracha both by holding both in his hand shows honor to both items, and he fulfills both opinions in a certain sense. That's what we said yesterday. Now the Gemara has another story related to this point. We are in the wide lines. Mike, you have it in the wide lines. 5 lines into the wide lines. Mr. Haber, you have it on the Lamed Testament base, 39b. Everybody have 39b? You have it, Morris? Kiva, you see it? Tana Kamed Rav Nachman Yitzchak. You got it? The first word on that is Rav Nachman Yitzchak is the first word on the line. A Tana, someone said over one of the rabbis who was fluent in saying over Berachos. Berachos are earlier recordings of statements of rabbis. So one of the later rabbis who was quoting earlier rabbis, a Braita, he said the following: Meniach aprusa b'toch hashleima. He told over. So he said, what are you supposed to do? Meniach aprusa b'toch hashleima. You put the piece, the large piece, underneath the whole challah, and then you say the bracha, but say a muvarech. You say the bracha, and then you cut. You say the bracha holding both, and then you cut it. The text that we have over here, because really some do not have the word botseya muvarech, because you're supposed to say the bracha and then you cut. See, then you say the bracha and then you cut them, holding both in your hands. Again, showing respect for both opinions, holding both in the hands at the time of the blessing. So Amalei. So Rav Nachman asked that rabbi. He asked him, "What is your name?" No, very good. So it means you hold them both in your hands for the bracha, and after you say the bracha, you put them down, and then you cut. Either you cut both, we said, and then you eat both, or we said before, just cut the one that's whole. That's the main one. Now, Amalei. So the Rav Nachman asked him, "Ma shmecha? What is your name?" He wanted to know what is your name? Rabbi, what's your name? So he tells him, Amalei, my name is Salmon. Some say he said Shalmon. By the way, you're going to see Salmon is a name coming up in Megillat Ruth. The end of Megillat Ruth, we have the name Salmon. Amalei. So he said to him, Shalom ata ushlema mishnascha. Your shalom, your peace, your name in the name Salmon, or how if you pronounce it Shalmon, we see the letters of shalom in your name. So shalom ata, and in a certain sense, he's saying to him, you're living up to your name. Every person, your name alludes to something about yourself. Right? There's something, if you look in your name, every person, the word shame is shum. The word shame means your name. Shum, that's where you are. A lot of people are able to look into the name and see that a lot of their mission in life, meaning everybody has a mission to keep the 613 mitzvot, but there's certain things unique about that person that that you have a specific job that you're going to be able to excel in, and it's in your name. So he says, I see that you're living up to what's in your name. Shalom ata ushlema mishnascha. And your teachings are very wholesome, very, very complete, very special. Shesamta shalom ben talmidim, because you, by going ahead and holding both the whole roll and the large piece, you created a peace among the different opinions, because now it wasn't like you went with one opinion over the other opinion. You were able to fulfill both opinions. Amar Rapapa says, now he says, some learned that shalom the mishnascha. Some say that he gave him a bracha, that there should be you should always have peace in your learning, and you should always be blessed. Amar Papa, Hakol Modim. Until now, we're talking about the regular weekday, regular Shabbat. What about on Pesach? On Pesach, everybody agrees, even Rabbi Yochanan, that says that you usually, if you have a large piece and you have a whole roll, you go after the whole roll. The whole roll is the more important. But on Pesach, the night of Pesach, there's something special about the piece. The piece meaning not P-E-A-C-E, P-I-E-A-C-E. The piece, the broken matzah, is something that you must hold when you say the bracha. When you're going to say the bracha, brachata Hashem Elokeinu melech olam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and Asher kedushanim mitzvotzav v'tzvona al achilat matzah, we need to hold, when we're saying the bracha, we hold the piece of matzah, even though the piece is not whole. So what many people do is they do the following: they hold the top matzah, the middle matzah, which is the broken matzah, and the bottom matzah. They hold all three when they say that the first bracha, because they want to have lechem mishneh. The top and the bottom are complete, so they're holding it. They have all three, and then after they say the first bracha, many people just drop the bottom matzah. Then they say the bracha Asher kiddushanu mitzvotav v'tzivon al achilat matzah on the top one, which is whole, and on the middle matzah, which is broken. What's unique about Pesach? Because Pesach matzah is called lechem oni, a poor man's bread. A poor man's bread is not whole. Poor man gets pieces. People give him a piece of bread. He comes to a home, right? He comes to a house, he collects. The poor man collects. What does he collect? He gets a piece. People give him a piece of this bread, a piece of that bread, a piece of this matzah, a piece of that matzah. And the night of Pesach, there's a mitzvah to eat lechem oni. That's why matzah, to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah, the matzah cannot be flavored up. You can't have egg. You can't fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach of matzah with egg matzah, right? Even the Sfardim who eat egg matzah throughout Pesach, correct? The night of Pesach, when they have the seder, when they're having the seder, when they make the bracha, they don't make the bracha al achilat matzah on the egg matzah. They cannot fill the mitzvah on egg matzah. Why? Because egg matzah is called matzah ashira. It's called rich matzah. Why is it rich? The egg matzah is rich because it's flavored. It has the egg. It has it's not in contrast to the matzah, the regular plain matzah that's called lechem oni. It's the Hebrew, right? It's clear. So therefore, but since Pesach there's a special mitzvah of lechem oni, so therefore you must hold that piece of matzah when you're saying the bracha, the brachot. Amar Papa, kol modim. Everybody agrees that Pesach meniach prusa b'toch shleima. You put the prusa underneath the whole matzah ubotzeya, and you go ahead and you cut from that. You need to cut from that matzah. You need to eat from that matzah. My timer. And what's the reason? And therefore, there are some people that understand that when you say the bracha, some understand it's going on that middle matzah, because that's the broken matzah. My timer, lechem oni ksiv. The Torah says it needs to be a poor man's bread. So therefore, Now, the fact is, you have to also cut the top one because you need lechem mishneh. But still, you have to, therefore you'll do both. We eat from both the top matzah and from the middle matzah. Omar Rab Abba. Rab Abba says, now what about Shabbat? Shabbat chayiv odam livsoa al shtei kikorot. On Shabbat, you're obligated to have two breads, two whole breads on Shabbat. And we know if you take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, we know for sure Friday night you're supposed to have two chalot, and we know Shabbat morning you're supposed to have two chalot. And when it comes to Suda Shlishit, see what when it comes to Suda Shlishit, let's see what it says in the Shulchan Aruch regarding Suda Shlishit. But you also have two, Mr. Haber says, correct. But Ashkenazim, let's see if we find here Suda Shlishit. Dine Suda Shlishit. Now, he says, as Mr. Haber says, so you need to also have lechem mishneh for Suda Shlishit. All three meals, the Shulchan Aruch says, you have to have two whole chalot. You hear that? The Ramah, the Ashkenaz rabbi, says that some people are lenient and Suda Shlishit, they only use one whole challah, but you should be strict to have two whole challah. That's what. So you hear that, Morris?
Yeah.
So we have on record. So for sure, the Sfardim don't have that leniency of some people are lenient for one challah Shlishit. The Mechaber says the Sfardi opinion is you're required to have two breads for Shlishit. That's what he says in the Shulchan Aruch of Yosef Cairo. Okay, just wanted to point that out. Okay. Now, continue in the way. Okay, so now continue in the Gemara. So you need two chalot throughout Shabbat. For Shabbat, you need two chalot. My timer. What's the reason? Lechem mishneksiv. Because the pasuk says that they got on Friday when the mun came down. They measured the mun on Friday, and they found they had a double portion. So to recognize that they had a double portion on Friday, the miracle that Hashem gave a double portion on Friday, and there was no mun came down on Shabbat. Therefore, we have to have a two chalot on Shabbat. On each meal, we should have two chalot. And similarly, there are those opinions that say that's the same reason by Yom Tov. The Tosfos says that on Erev Yom Tov, let's say this Sunday night is Yom Tov, we have to have two chalot Sunday night also. Why we need two chalot Sunday night and Monday morning and Monday night and Tuesday morning? But the same thing, that it came a double portion on Erev Yom Tov. The same way on Erev Shabbat, there was a double portion of bread, of mun, not bread, mun. So too, on Erev Yom Tov, there was a double portion. And therefore, to remember that miracle, you have to have two chalot on Yom Tov also. Okay, so that's the reason. That's what Tosfos says in Psachim. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, Chazina le Rav Kahana. I saw Rav Kahana, the Noketarti, that when he made the bracha, he held on Shabbat, he held both chalot when he said the bracha, but he only cut one challah. He did not say you're required to cut both chalot, even though you need to have two chalot. When you're having Friday night, you need to have two chalot, but do you need to cut both chalot and eat from both chalot? Maybe some people might have such a custom.
Yeah.
Good
luck. That's how
Okay, so Morris says some people do cut both challah. because it's good luck for it's a
Kali,
what?
There's a Kali, and then I use bread. Then you go,
Okay, you cut both chalot.
yes.
Okay, and so this opinion in the Gemara, and the way the Gemara in Shabbat, and we're going to take out the Shulchan Aruch on this, Morris, in a second. Morris says that his minhag is to cut both, but in the Gemara in Shabbat explains that Rav Kahana explained his minhag, but the pasuk says that when they likdu lechem misha, they collected a double portion. It only says that they collected, they held a double portion. So therefore, he says, as long as you're holding the two chalot when you say the bracha, that is good enough. You do not need, according to that, to cut both chalot. Now, if you see that letter chet, the letter chet takes you to the Shulchan Aruch, Reish Ayin Dalid, Sif Aleph, and we'll see what he says in Reish Ayin Dalid, Sif Aleph. He says in Shulchan Aruch, he says you have the two chalot, and he says women, the Chafetz Chaim says women are also obligated in lechem mishneh. If a lady having a meal by herself, she also has to have lechem mishneh, because the miracle of the man applied to her also. And he says you cut the bottom one, right? We know, he says at least, we know Friday night you cut the bottom challah. You hold both chalot, and remember you're supposed to, the halacha also says, keep the bottom one closer to you, because you don't want to pass over a mitzvah. You don't want to, you said a bracha, and then you move away the top, and then you eat the bottom. That's not appropriate. So therefore, always keep the bottom. When you say the bracha, that's what I'm just saying. I'm not saying it over here, but I'm just telling you that's the halacha. You always never like to pass by a mitzvah. So therefore, if you're going to go ahead and say the bracha and then push away the top one, it's not respectful. Then you're passing away eating that. So therefore, you go ahead and keep the bottom one closer to you. When you say the bracha, a little closer, say the bracha, and he says, cut the bottom challah.
Friday night.
Friday night, yes.
So,
Then Arizal says what? He says he cut. Okay, Arizal maybe said something different. Now,
you cut the bottom one. Rabbi,
yes.
why not just hold?
Why do you want what?
Do that. Why not just hold that one? Some people.
So you're holding it away. Okay, very good. So, but I know our minhag is we have to look more in the halacha. We, as Mr. Haber says, we cut the bottom one Friday night, and Shabbat day we cut the top one. The top one is closer to you, right?
Shabbat you cut on the Shabbat with
Now the Mishnah Berurah says, the Chafetz Chaim says the following. He says, now like Morris said about cutting both chalot, that the Shloah HaKadosh did what Morris does. The Shloah, he cut both chalot. Like Morris is particular about cutting both chalot. He says you cut both. Right. Now. Okay. That's the minhag. Okay. So again, we have two different opinions. What if you cut both chalot or just one challah? The Shulchan Aruch seems to only mention you cut the bottom one. He doesn't say that you cut the bottom and you need to cut from both. So it seems from the language of the Shulchan Aruch himself, you only need to cut one, the bottom one. However, some have a custom to cut both. So whatever your custom is, follow your custom. But it's good to know what the basic law is. Now, the Gemara continues. Rav Zera havibotza akula sheruta. As Rav Zera, when he would cut the challah, he would cut a piece the size of challah, amount the size of bread that he would need to use for the whole meal. You know, a lot of times, let's say you eat challah over a meal. So you would say, You take one piece now, then you take another piece later. But he cut, let's say a person generally eats 2 pieces of challah for a meal. The piece that he cut was the size of 2 pieces, a large piece. So the Gemara it's going to question, doesn't it look like you're acting inappropriately? You're not supposed to act like someone who's famished. If you eat such a big piece, it doesn't look so respectful. So the Gemara is going to ask the question, how did he do that? And the Gemara is going to respond, because during the weekdays, he did not act like this. He only acted like this on Shabbat to show the honor of Shabbat. I'm cutting such a big piece because I'm such a love, appreciation for the holiness and the kavod of Shabbat. So that's what the Gemara is going to say. Like, there's a halacha, what I recall, it says you shouldn't eat from a pot. You're not supposed to eat from a pot, because it's a sign of like you're famished. You go to a pot to eat from a pot. So the Gemara said like this. He would cut a size piece that was enough that all the challah that he's going to be able to eat from the meal is in that one piece, to show that his love for the meal, for the Shabbat meal, and he's eating a lot. He wants to show his love for the Shabbat meal. Amale Ravina the Ravashi. And by the way, there's laws. You're supposed to make sure you have a nice appetite for the Shabbat meal. You should enjoy the Shabbat meal. Amale Ravina Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, I don't understand. How did the rabbi do it like that? Please explain it to me. He's acting like he's starving. He's acting like he's famished. And he's eating in such a fashion that doesn't seem to be a nice way to act. It doesn't seem to be derech eretz to act that way. Amalei. So Rav Ashi explained, he said the following: Kiva dechol yoma, every day of the week, 6 days a week, lo ka'avid hachi. He would not eat in such a fashion. He wouldn't cut a piece of such a size that would be used for the whole meal. Rak ha'idna, but only ha'idna now, today on Shabbat, ka'avid, he did it like this. Lo mizchazei kirav tunuta. It doesn't look that he's acting like he's famished. Rather, he's showing his love and his appreciation for the Shabbat meal. And that's what the Gemara says. Now, and it's brought down in the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, on a regular day, a person shouldn't take such a tremendous, cut himself such a large piece to eat from, because that's not a sign of derech eretz. That means you're acting in a way as if you're famished. Now, Rav Ami, Rav Asi. Rav Ami, Rav Asi, kavim misr meilei rifta de ruva. When they had the bread, let's say they made an eruv chatzerot, right? Let's say let's say if you live in a let's say in the old days, the Gemara spoke about eruv chatzerot, when you have houses and the houses opened up into a courtyard and the houses share the courtyard. Think about a bungalow colony, or think about a building with the hallways, a building and everybody sharing the hallways of a building. In order for you to carry from your apartment to the hallways is a public area for the members of the building. So the issue of the hallways of a building, it has some resemblance of a public place. And we don't want people to make a mistake to carry from a public place to a private place. Because that would be a big sin called carrying from Rishus Rabim to Rishus Yochid. So even though the hallways of a building are not on a Torah level public place, because they belong to the members of the building, it's more private. It's not public property, it's private property. But since it's shared by all the members, it looks like it has some resemblance of public. Similarly, if you have a courtyard in front of a few homes, and all the homes share this courtyard. So the fact that it's public for these homes, it has a resemblance of a public property. And the Chachamim said, we got to do something to make it, to remind everybody and to make it look as if this is not a public area. So they would collect bread from each member of the houses, people who shared that courtyard, and they would put the bread in one of the homes, and then it would be as if everyone is living in that home, and therefore as if that courtyard belongs to the home, and therefore it serves as a reminder that this is not a public area, it's a more private area. That's that's how it works. The Eruv Chatzeres, we're uniting it as if it makes it a more private area, and therefore people will know, only over here I can carry because of this Eruv Chatzerot, I'm not going to go ahead and carry outside from the public domain, from the street into the house. That's a little bit of the idea of Erev Chatzerot. And there's all different halachot because, regarding goyim, what do you do with goyim? If they share hallways, lobbies, they have to rent it to you or lease it to you, the rights of the lobbies. But in our co-ops in the Lower East Side, is that they had a Jewish management, and he leased, and he for 99 years he gave the rights of the lobbies to they gave the rights to certain people, and therefore they were able to, and as a result of that, they were able to sell or whatever the position of the goyim in the lobbies, and therefore they were able to make this erev chatzerot. Because when you have so therefore there's a whole discussion on how to do it. So
if you live in a
yes. So the question, so if you live in a building and there's a landlord, I don't know that access to apartment. I don't know if that's enough. It used to be the landlord would have a stove in the apartment, something that belongs to the landlord. It used to be they would leave a stove in an apartment, a refrigerator in the apartment, and it belonged to the landlord. The old days, and therefore the landlord had something in each apartment. So technically, in that situation, you might not need an erev chatzerot because he has something in every apartment. But today's day and age, they don't leave anything in any. They don't give things in apartments anymore. It depends on the building. Say many buildings, let's say many co-ops, they used to leave stuff in each apartment. Now, let's say the co-ops don't leave. It depends on each individual co-op. But which what? Right, if the refrigerator belongs to the landlord, therefore he has something in every apartment, therefore that might not need an erev chatzerot. Right, exactly. We have this question with the college dorms. The Jewish kids, they live in some of them go to college campuses, secular colleges, and now the question is, can they carry from their hallway into their apartment? Because the hallway is considered a public area for the building. But again, does the landlord, do they have something in every apartment? Do they leave something every? Everything depends on the situation, and everyone has to look into the halacha when it becomes practical. We're just giving some just broad, little, people should be aware of. So the Gemara said, Rav Ami, Rav Asi, Rav Ami, Rav Asi, ki havi misramile rifta de ruva. When they would have the bread of the erev, let's say they made the erev, and let's say the erev was finished, they went somewhere else. They don't need the. Now they're going to eat the bread after they use the erev. They finish, Shabbat was over. So usually what they do is they make erev chatzerot. They use matzah. Matzah lasts the whole year, and then they keep it for the whole year. The erev chatzerot. But here they're talking about they weren't used. They for whatever reason they weren't. Maybe every week they made a new erev chatzerot. I don't know what they did here. Maybe every week they made a separate new, or they were going to another town and they didn't need the bread anymore for the erev chatzerot. So what did he do on Shabbat? What he did was, so let's say it was Sunday, and yesterday was Shabbat, and now Sunday they're sitting down for a meal on Sunday and they're having bread, and they have different breads to use. So what bread did they use? They used the bread of the erev chatzerot. Erev chatzerot, the bread that was used for the erev chatzerot, they wanted to use that bread to make hamotzi lechem min haaretz after Shabbat. Because the rule is a very important, nice halacha. Once you do one mitzvah with this, do another mitzvah. So he says, Hoyel, this avibo mitzvah chada. Once we did one mitzvah, we fulfilled the mitzvah of erev with this bread. Now again, the erev bread has to remain throughout the Shabbat. But now he says the Shabbat was over. Let's say they had Melav and Malka, whatever it was. Navid be mitzvah achriti. Let's make another mitzvah, and therefore they did another mitzvah with this bread. We find this halacha when it comes to Pesach. Many people they save their lulav, they burn it with the chametz. They did one mitzvah with the lulav. Now I'm going to do another mitzvah with the lulav. I'm going to go in and what? I'm going to burn the chametz using that lulav. That's just an example of once you did one mitzvah with that, do another mitzvah. I think some people also, I think I saw brought down, let's say a person that sit that was pasul, it was once good, and then the tzitzis was no good anymore. So some people take that and use it as a mark for the svarim, place mark for the svarim. Once you did one mitzvah with it, you want to do another mitzvah, you're going to use it to help find a place, keep a place where you're learning. The Gemara continues. Amar Rav. Now we're on Mem Amar Aleph. Mazel Tov. Amar Rav. Rav says the following. See, we're talking about the mitzvah of Hamotzi Lechem and Aretz, right? About the important how to do it, how to do it right. What about now? The Gemara is going to teach us about being careful not to interrupt, not to make a hefsek between the bracha and the mitzvah, right? You say a bracha Hamotzi Lechem and Aretz, but you need to be careful not to interrupt. What about if a guy went ahead and he said something between the bracha and the eating? So the Gemara is going to say, it depends what did he say. What was he talking about? What was his conversation between the bracha and the eating? Amar Rav. So Rav says, if you said the bracha, and then you said Tov Baruch, after you said the bracha, you said to one of the members in the house, take from the cut piece. Take from the piece that I said the bracha. So now, is that considered an interruption when you told one of the members at the table, take from the piece that was cut from the bracha? So, Eina Sarich Levarech. You do not need to repeat the bracha, because this bracha is connected to this speech, the conversation that you said was not out of left field, as they say. It was connected to the bracha. You said a bracha for the person at the table, right? You said a bracha for yourself, the members of the home. And then you said, like, pass it to that person. Pass the bread to that person. Or take from the bread that we just cut. So being that you spoke something that's connected to what you did, that's not called an interruption. And the Gemara says, however, the first opinion says, meaning if you say, well, by the way, what's the weather today? To say a new bracha. If you said a bracha, by the way, anybody knows the weather today? That's it. But if you go in and you say, take the piece that's broken, that's not. No, I don't think it's recommended for you to say that. You should try to avoid even saying that. The language is, if you did it, you're not required to say the bracha again. It's not saying that this is acceptable to do that. Now, have melach, but if a person goes in and he says, you know what? Bring some salt, because you want to dip the bread into salt, as we spoke about yesterday. So the question is have melach a interruption or not? So now you can see have melach, it is connected to the bread, but you could eat the bread without the salt, technically. So therefore, some say, the first opinion says, that is already considered an interruption. Saying Have Melach, after you said the bracha and you did not eat from it yet, I said the bracha, and before I ate from it, I said, bring me some salt. So the first opinion says, Sarech Levarech. You have to repeat the bracha. And it's interesting that Tosfos actually paskins like that opinion, that if you say bring, that's what it sounds like from the language of Tosfos. We'll see what it says in Shulchan Aruch.
Rabbi, it should be lehakel, no? It's the Rabbanan, right?
What's the Rabbanan? The
is the writer.
Right, the bracha is the Rabbanan, that's true. But even though it's the Rabbanan, if I go ahead, the same way if I say, what's the weather today? You understand, I have to repeat the bracha. The fact that the bracha is the Rabbanan, but sometimes I got to do the Rabbanan over again. We only say when it's safek, the Rabbanan, when there's a question. If I need to recite the bracha again or not, then we say lahakel if it's safek.
This is also a question because you're going to repeat the bracha.
So this opinion holds that he upholds that it's not a question. This opinion holds that it's considered a real interruption. And therefore, he looks at this first opinion says, this is a real interruption, and therefore, because it's a real interruption, I'm not saying that's the halacha l'maaseh. but at least Tosfos seems to go with this, but not with saying that lahalacha. But he says that this is considered a real interruption. That's what he holds. And therefore he says you got to go ahead and repeat the bracha. He doesn't have a question, Mike. This rabbi has no question. He feels it's a real interruption. Is that clear?
Yep. So, Rabbi, you're gonna get the famous question if there is an interruption between the first and the second bracha.
Okay, so here
we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Right.
Okay.
That's good. That's a good.
We're gonna stay tuned, Rabbi.
Yes, we'll have to stay tuned for that. Very good. So he says. Now, if he says, or he says havi melach or havi liftan. Liftan is like something else that you dip the cream cheese or anything that you put in, you eat together with the bread to make the bread tasty. If he says havi liftan, havi melach, sarach levarach, you have to repeat the bracha. Rabbi Yochanan argues, but he says, afilu havi melach. Even if you said, bring me salt, or bring me this liftan, or bring me this other food that will help bring taste to the bread. You don't have to make a bracha again, because he says this has to do with the motzi. You're saying I want salt because you bring the salt. You're not talking about the weather. You're talking about salt for the bread that you said a bracha. So it's connected enough that it's called not an interruption to require a new bracha. That's the second opinion Rabbi Yochanan holds. Is that clear? Now, then he says, but gavel l'turi. But if he says, you know what, you got to go ahead and prepare the food for the animals. Take the wheat, the bran, and mix it together and prepare for the foods for the animals. That's considered an interruption. Sarach levarech. You're talking about food for animals. You're not talking about pass the guy the bread. You're talking about the animals. That's considered an interruption according to the first opinion. This opinion that if you say that because there's a mitzvah, you're supposed to give the animals to eat before you eat. So if he goes in and he says, you know what? He says, give the animals before he ate from the bread himself, and he said, Hamotzi. This first opinion says that's too much disconnected to the bracha. You spoke about a separate detail, which is not really part of your bread. He said, and you're talking about giving food to the animals. Therefore, he said that's considered a hefsek. You have to repeat the bracha. However, why not? Mr. Amos says today many people act like animals. It's a big problem today. But we hope in the Jewish community, we hope people are not acting that way. We do see in the society out there that that's how people are acting. And I want to say the reason is, Mr. Amos, is because people have desires, tavot, like animal, like we have the animal part of us and we have the spiritual part of us. But the society is not working on they're only focusing on they're leaving the animal part of them to go. They're not doing anything to curb their desires. That's why they look like animals, they act like animals. Because there's nothing today that you can tell someone to curb your desires. Therefore, that's why the desires are just going up and up and up and up. There's nothing putting in check. That's what's happening. That's why the society is getting worse and worse and worse. That's what's happening. So the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes has the most lenient opinion, Mike. Listen to Rav Sheshes. Even if you say, after you say Hamotzi, and you didn't even taste from it yet, remember, everybody, the lawyers, when you say a bracha, you're always supposed to first swallow before you talk. Here the guy went ahead and he spoke and he said, get the food to the animals. Rav Sheshes said that you don't have to repeat the bracha. Why? Because that also has to do with your hamotzi. By the way, because you're not allowed to eat until you give to the animals. And therefore, if the fact that you spoke about the animals after you said the hamotzi, it's not from left field. It's not what's the weather today. It's connected enough to he says, the Amar of Yehuda Marav, Asalo Adam Sheyachal Kol Nashita Machal Emto. You're not allowed to eat before you give bread to your until you give food to your animal. Shenema, we say every day, V'nasati esev v'sadcha Levemtecha. First, the order is I'll give grass to your animals, and then v'hadav v'achalta v'savata. Then you will eat. Some point out it's only about when it comes to food. You have to give them food before you eat food. What about drink? When it comes to drinking, you can have drinks before you give them, because it says we find by Rivka. What does Rivka say? He says you should drink, and I'll also bring for your animals. First, the humans would take care of first, and then the animals were taken care of. And in the Shulchan Aruch, in Simei Kuf Samach Zayin, Sivav, we'll see what they say about this halacha. Kuf Samach Zayin, Sivav, he says the following. Yochal miyad. After you say a bracha of Yosef Cairo, the Shulchan said you have to eat right away. Eat right away. And the Chafetz Chaim explains, because even just delay of time, if I say a bracha and then I just wait and then I eat, it's also not acceptable. No delay. There shouldn't be a delay even of being quiet is not recommended to delay. You hear that, Mr. Haber? You should eat right away. And he says you should not speak between the bracha and the eating. And he says that if you did speak, you have to repeat the bracha unless the speech were things that have to do with what you said the bracha on. And he gives the example, if you said bring salt, or even if you say give food for the animal. Also, it's not considered you don't have to repeat the bracha. That's the Shulchan Aruch takes Mike. He goes with the most lenient opinion, and you would not have to repeat the bracha, even if you say give the food for the animals, because we say it's connected enough to the bracha. However, the Ramah writes, Mikom Makom, Lechatchila lo yafsik klal. Lechatchila, you should not make any interruption. You should not say give to the animals. You should not do any of that. Lechatchila, even if you don't have salt, you should not say the words give. Should not say it outright. Bring salt. You should first swallow a little bit, and then and then you're good. So I think this is an important halacha that we said over here. People have to be very cognizant of that. Okay, so I think hopefully we'll take these halachos to heart, and we'll be very careful. And maybe tomorrow we'll talk about the Tosfot, that the Tosfot talks about the idea if a person puts on tefillin. That's also when you put on tefillin, if a person would speak between the Shel Yad and the Shel Rosh, they repeat the bracha. You know, Ramosha Feinstein, we'll just end with this point. I observed Ramosha Feinstein. So then you should wait till you first put on the Shel Rosh. You shouldn't answer you should not answer between the Shel Yad and the Shel Rosh. Right, you have to be careful. Don't answer, because since the bracha that you said goes on your Shel Rosh also, so you don't answer Amen Yesh Ram until you put on the Rosh and it's in its place. I had the privilege to watch Ramosha Feinstein. I prayed to Ramosha Feinstein when I was a young kid, and Ramosha Feinstein what happened was he put on the Shel Yad and he put only like 3 around his hand. Then he put on the Shel Rosh. Then he went back and he put 7. And as a kid, I used to like to take pictures. So I saw this phenomenon. 3, I took a picture with 3, and I took a picture with 7. I thought it was interesting because most people don't do that. But the point of that, his minhag was because you want to delay the interruption, the time between the Shel Yad, the Shel Rosh. So because the bracha of the Shel Yad goes for the Shel Rosh also. When you say your bracha on the Shel Yad, have in mind this bracha for the Shel Yad and for the Shel Rosh. So therefore, how do you minimize the time? So he only did 3. He did around 3. He put on the Shel Rosh, and then he went back and he did. Now it's interesting that his son, Rabbi Reuven Feinstein, does that way, and the son, Rabbi David Feinstein, did not do it that way. I think they say that Rabbi David Feinstein said his father never told him to do it the way his father did it. Maybe he never did it that way. He did the way the world generally does it. The custom of the world is not to do it that way. Custom of the world is to do 7, then show rows. They don't do 3 and then go back to the 7. So therefore, that's just interesting. Halacha. Have a great day. You must have seen. Maybe you saw Rabbi Feinstein himself, or maybe some people like that. Maybe you were in Staten Island, saw Rabbi Reuven Feinstein. All right. Have a great day, everybody. All the best. Did we lose everybody on the screen, or looks like? Morning, Sammy. What did you say?
Shouldn't Ashkenazis say on each one of the
Ashkenazim say on the show yad and on the show row.
So why does he, since he's already doing that?
But the bracha on this also goes for both the show yad, even the Ashkenazim. You have in mind for the show yad and the show rosh, and the second bracha is a second bracha on the show rosh. I mean, you're saying 2 brachot on the show rosh. One, you have to take it. The show yad you have in mind also for the head. And then another separate bracha for the Ashkenazim on that.
Yes.
Good.
Still he delayed.
Still he did 3, and then he just here, and then he went back for the 7. He didn't want a large delay.
On both brachas.
Right. Between one bracha, but because he was saying the bracha on the Shalyad, and it had him on the show road for the head, he didn't want any large interruption. Have a great day, everybody.